What's going on, YouTube? If you have been really enjoying the Artemis space flight around the moon, maybe you recently saw Project Hail Mary in theaters, or maybe you even read the book too, then you are in absolutely the right spot. Because today we are going to dive into some of my favorite books from the past 5 or 6 years, everything to do with astronauts and space travel. This is going to be spoiler free, fiction and nonfiction. And these are all books that I've read myself and really, really enjoyed. So let's get started. First up, we are actually starting with a trilogy of books, and they are all written by Commander Chris Hadfield. He is a Canadian astronaut who spent his career flying around way up high, but ever since he's retired from being up there, he's come back down here and been putting a lot of time into putting his ideas and words on paper for all of us to enjoy. You might even recognize him from being really popular on social media and all his appearances across TV, podcasts, and new media across the last decade or so. Now, this series is based on the American-Soviet relationships during the Apollo years of the space race, which is primarily the 1970s. This first book in the trilogy in particular is called The Apollo Murders, and it is based in an alternate version of 1973. It's all about the relationships between the Americans and the Soviets in the 70s. This is the heart of the Cold War. So this book has a lot of historical fiction to it. Names used in this book are real. Funny enough, they may not always indicate their exact history of who the name really belonged to. You'll get it if you read the book, but it's a really, really enjoyable read. Now, the main character in this series is a pilot named Kaz Zemeckis, and he is a test pilot who is about to embark on his first space mission, but in an accident, he gets into a crash and loses vision in one of his eyes. Now, this makes him ineligible to fly up to space, but it doesn't prevent him from becoming a fascinating character throughout this trilogy of books. Now, in this series, you'll learn a lot about Kaz as a person. You know how in some books, the main characters are pretty flat, you have no real attachment to them, and you don't really care to see where they end up? That's not a problem here. This is a character that will last you this entire trilogy. That's the only spoiler I'm going to give you. He's not dying. There's more books. All right. But he's a fascinating character to watch as he develops throughout this trilogy. Now, in the first book, The Apollo Murders, it really sets the base for him for the trilogy of what's to come. You understand his origin story, his relationships with both the American and Soviet space systems, and he is the leader of this book. He is the main hero-type character who encounters a lot of problems and has to figure out ways to fix them, or else bad things are going to happen in the space race. Now, the first book, The Apollo Murders, was fascinating. I didn't know when I read it that there were more to come. Turns out there were. The second book in the series is called The Defector. Same idea, Cold War, 70s, Apollo, space race, America, Russia, touch of Chinese. Really, really interesting reads. Again, this is an adventure where astronauts are going to be up in space. Things are going to go wrong, and Kaz and his team are going to be in charge of figuring out what to do. Now, some books I've found that have been about space have been really in the one direction of sci-fi or really in one direction of technical space knowledge and know-how. This book, it leans more towards the actual technical know-how and a little less on the sci-fi. I find it a fascinating balance. I think it's done perfectly. Now, in this book, you will read things that will teach you a lot about how flying actually works, how the space system was built and operates. And as you read this book, you kind of feel a bit smarter as you go. Because of the insights that Commander Hadfield can provide, you're going to feel like you're a more knowledgeable person once you come out the other side of this book. It's not a book that's so technical that it's hard to read. At no point during these books where I was like, I don't get this, and because I don't get this, it means that I'm not going to be able to fully appreciate this story. Not once. Hadfield has an amazing ability to put these words on paper and just seamlessly make it readable for any real skill level of reader. Would it be my first book that I'd read as a 10-year-old in middle school? No. But If you're an adult, I think you'd really enjoy the story. It paces really well. The chapters are not too long or too short. They're the perfect amount to really let you understand the characters, how they feel, and it just engages you so fast. This is a book, each one in the series is probably 400 pages or so. Each book is honestly, once you get into it, pretty hard to put down. The final book in this trilogy is called Final Orbit. Now, it sounds like a series-ending book. I don't know. I do know that when it came out, I was one of the first in line getting ready to read it because of how much I enjoyed the first two. But it's a really great story. It has no indication that it cannot continue on further into the series. There are so many things happening at a fast pace in this book that I think all of you would really enjoy it. Now, particularly if you've gotten engaged in Artemis over the past month, even if you've just kind of hopped on the bandwagon and really enjoyed what's going on day to day and have never really put too much thought into it, I think there's so much for anyone to learn in these books. You can be a hardcore, I've been knowing about space for the last 20 years of my life kind of person, and I still think there are things for you to learn in this book. Now, it's fiction. It has a touch of historical fiction to it. I learned a lot. I would definitely recommend this series. So it's The Apollo Murders, The Defector, and Final Orbit. Maybe I'm biased because I'm Canadian. It's possible. But if you like space, if you like Artemis, I would absolutely read all three of these books. They're really, really good. Next up, we are diving into some fiction. And this one is straight up sci-fi. Whereas the first trilogy was more of a historical fiction angled series, this is a standalone novel, solo sci-fi. If you like Project Hail Mary, this one is for you. Right here, we have it. It's called Inner Space by Jacob Szmalek. He is a Polish author. This book has been translated into English, making it much easier for me to read. And I think you guys would really enjoy it as well. Now, this book follows a space captain named Lucy, and she is the protagonist of this book. And she heads up to space where she has to navigate relationships between the Russians and the Chinese. This book is really, really fast paced. When I started it, I thought, oh, okay, this could be a little more heavy sci-fi. This might take a bit longer. No, this is a very easy read. I can honestly say that I'd never read a book by this author before, but if he puts out anything else into English, I will be reading it because I really enjoyed this book. The pace moves really quick. The main character, Lucy, is a character who you can feel like you really understand. You can understand the relationships that she's dealing with. It touches on everything from her family and the reactions and importance of that in her life, as well as her relationships with her space family. There's a ton going on in this book. It moves really quickly. It's not as real life as the Apollo series. This is more just about let's go up into space, make some things up, have a great time, and make a really enjoyable experience for the reader. I would say this is more of an easy read. If you're looking for something super complex, there are bits and pieces of that in this book, but it's not super technical. It's just a really enjoyable, I'm going to sit down, rip through this, really enjoy the story, and hope there's another one to come. You know, sometimes you're reading a book and it feels like you're sort of watching a TV show. Like you can see it all happening in your head. That's pretty much what this book is. So Inner Space, absolutely check it out. Okay, now, listen up. This next book is nonfiction. Now, this is probably the entire reason I'm making this video. Sometimes you get asked, hey dude, what's your favorite book you've ever read? For me, this book has been the answer. It's called The New Guys, and it is the story of the 1978 astronaut class at NASA. This is nonfiction. This is not a made-up story. This is an account of what actually happened for the most diverse class of astronauts that NASA has ever put together. Now, this book is a chronological account of the stories of these astronauts from their beginnings as youngsters before NASA to how they grew into their roles at NASA and excelled. Now, if you've ever heard of people like Sally Ride, Sally Ride, this is Sally Ride, Judy Resnick, Ron McNair, Fred Gregory, Anna Fisher, The stories of these people in these books are incredible. The amount of detail that Meredith Bagby goes into writing this book is outstanding. Now, it's a longer book. It's 500-ish pages. I chipped away at it over pretty much an entire winter, simply because I didn't set out going, I'm going to read this whole book. I was like, let's just take a peek, see if I like it. Turned out I loved it. It's one of my favorite books ever, and I really, really think you guys would enjoy it too. Now, one of the cool things about this book is that it almost reads like it's fiction. It's not. It's real. But the way that Meredith Bagby puts this book together, it runs like a story. Now, each of the characters in this book are real people. You come to know them essentially as made-up superheroes. They're real people with fascinating stories. But the way Meredith puts them together, they don't almost feel real because they're so cool. Now, in particular, my favorites in this book were probably Sally Ride, maybe a little bit of Ron McNair. McNair has a fascinating story, basically because he was denied education because he was black growing up, turned into an astronaut. Heck of a story. Sally Ride had her own interesting path. She didn't come from humble beginnings, but she had a lot of issues to navigate in her life and understanding herself as a person. And that is explained throughout this book as well. This class of astronauts was the most diverse class that NASA had ever put together. Now, this 1978 crew was nicknamed the New Guys. It's the title of the book. It's who they were called in real life. And that's because in this class, you had the first people of color, black, Asian, were suddenly flying with white. The first people of a different sexual orientation. This book and the cast featured the first gay astronauts. That had never happened. The first women flew to space in this book. They were part of this astronaut class. All brand new. NASA had historically been run by entirely white men, predominantly men of military service. Test pilots were really the only people that had a chance to fly. And that was great for a few years. Obviously, it got us to where we are today. In 1978, NASA had a bit of a different train of thought, and they decided to take a stab at seeing who America had to offer overall. What else was out there? How many great minds could we put together? It turned out it was the best decision they ever made, and this book tells you all about it. Now, in this book, if you've started from nothing with your knowledge of space, NASA, astronauts, space travel in general, you are going to feel like you have learned a lot. This book is incredibly educational. Now, there are parts that are a little harder to read. They take a little longer to understand. Some bits are more technical. You may have to go back and reread a page or two once or twice to really understand what's being said. But it's interwoven in between the stories and the personal lives of these astronauts. So it's not like it's really hard to digest. You're getting the full story and the full scope of what was actually going on. And it's really, really enjoyable. I would absolutely recommend this book to anyone with an interest in astronauts. If you've had a fascination with Artemis over the past little while, this book should be top of your list, ahead of the fiction ones. You will learn so much. You will understand astronauts as people, understand what they go through, the impact it has on not just themselves, but all their family and friends around them. It's a grind, and this book really helped me understand that. Read it, check it out. The New Guys, honestly, my favorite book ever. Next up, we are doing another nonfiction. Not quite as long as The New Guys, equally as interesting. Now, the book is called Rocket Men by Robert Kurson, and it follows the crew of Apollo 8. This features Jim Lovell, Frank Borman, and Bill Anders, 3 military test pilots, old school guys who fly Apollo 8. Now, this story is a little different than the crew from the Challenger and the 1978 astronaut class. Those guys were all diverse, had very, very unique backgrounds. This crew of guys was a little more similar. Now, Jim Lovell, if you've ever heard of him, it's probably because you watched the movie Apollo 13 with Tom Hanks. That's Jim Lovell. It's this guy. Now, this was Apollo 8, so this was pre-Apollo 13 fame. Not quite as a crazy Hollywood movie style story to go with here, but still equally as interesting, I found, were the characters featured in this book. Similar to the New Guys, this book kind of reads like it's fiction. Now, Lovell, Anders, and Borman become characters that you become attached to in this book. You want to know what's going to happen to them in their stories. It's a very, very easy to follow read. Now, Robert Kurson has written a few other books. I'd never read anything by him before, but I've already gone and added his work to my reading lists. He's written other books that are not about space. I'll be checking him out because the way he writes this book, Rocket Men, it flows so easily. It's a book that's not complicated. You don't pick it up and feel like you're overwhelmed with knowledge. Similar to the New Guys, I'm impressed at how these authors are putting these stories together without whacking you with information and making you feel like a dummy while you're reading it. It really feels like you're learning as you go. And it's not so complicated that you feel overwhelmed or that you're out of your depth. The stories they tell are really well written. I would absolutely recommend you check out this book. Apollo 8 was in the 60s, and the 60s were a fascinating decade in world history. The author of this book dives right in. He doesn't ignore what else is going on in the world. So there are portions of this book that dive into the JFK assassination. Martin Luther King is referenced a lot in this book. World events that are going on are really kind of blended in seamlessly with what NASA was up to and how the Apollo 8 flight was affected. It's a really cool account of what happened in the world. This is an historical fiction book. I learned a lot as I went, not just about space, but about general geopolitics and world events in general. If you're looking for a place to start reading about space, I'd say this one is perhaps a little easier of a start than the New Guys. If you're looking for a book that's only a few hundred pages and you feel like you can probably read over the span of a couple of weeks, that'd be this book. We are doing one more nonfiction, and it's called The Six by Lauren Grush. Now, this book follows the first women astronauts at NASA. Now, the last book, Rocket Men, was all about the boys. This book is essentially the female version of that. Fascinating read. Sally Ride, again, main character, Judy Resnick, Anna Fisher, Kathy Sullivan, the first female astronauts at NASA. Their stories are told in this book. Again, it's historical, it's facts only. It's a fascinating look into the lives of how these women grew up within the NASA program. Now, this book is probably the least detailed, I would say, of the books that I've listed out here today. It's a pretty easy read. If you've read some of the other books today, there'll be parts of this book that you're familiar with already. Perhaps for me, because I had read this most recently out of all the books we've talked about today, I'm a little biased on that front. Perhaps it just means I'm learning a lot as we go. I feel like I want you guys to have that same experience as me because it feels really good as you read. Now, this book, The Six, again, absolutely would recommend just the stories that it tells. I know I said it earlier, but it really does feel like you're watching a TV show in your head with these books. I would check out all these books that we've talked about today. Whether you've been into the Artemis program just in the past few months, Project Hail Mary from a sci-fi perspective, space is just so cool. Now, I've only really got into space, admittedly, over the past 7-8 years or so, max. It was really kind of during peak COVID where I started reading about space when I had some more time to myself at home. And ever since then, I've really enjoyed the journey, learning about how NASA works, the Canadian Space Agency works, just space travel in general. So if you've enjoyed these past few months this spring, where the news cycle has been dominated, aside from the bad stuff, the fun stuff has been dominated by space travel and sci-fi, I would check out all these books. It's a good mix of fiction and nonfiction. Depending on your mood, your vibe that day, you can mix in a few at a time. They're really, really good stories. There's good people featured in these books, and I think there's a lot for all of us to learn. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit that follow button, smash that thumbs up button. I'm going to make some more for you guys soon. I've really enjoyed this video here today. Peace out. We'll see you in the next one.